What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith, hanging out with actor, comedian, host of Hiking with Kevin Nealon. How are you?
Good, buddy. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for coming in.
It's a pleasure, man. I grew up watching you.
Oh, is that so? I think it's kind of the opposite.
Treat. Yeah, a real treat.
You watched a lot of these interviews in the past?
Yeah, man. I've just glued to it.
Soaked them all in.
Yeah.
So you're here in New York. You're performing at Caroline's this weekend, and you've done the whole stand-up thing for a long time, but Caroline's is a special place, and why is it something that you continue to do with stand-up, and what's Caroline's like for you after all these years?
Yes, I have been doing stand-up for quite a while. I love stand-up. It's really what I started off doing, you know, before the acting came along and Saturday Night Live and all those things. And I never stopped doing it for almost the last 40 years, and I love it. And Caroline's has really been a special place for me because it's such a great club, and Caroline is such a great, you know, club owner,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I mean, I remember when I started way downtown, you know, in the Seaport area. And I've been coming just about every year, I think, for quite a while, you know, and the audiences are great, and it's a good sized room for me, and I just love it.
Yeah, and I'm sure for you, there's nothing like the immediacy that comes with something like that.
Yeah, I love, that's the great thing about stand-up. You have the immediacy. You know, you're not rewriting things and going over it, and you could talk about whatever you want to talk about.
It's true. Yeah, and it's funny because we were talking before, like you still have your standard hour, but obviously stand-up has changed a ton since you first started. So what are some of the different challenges and pitfalls that you deal with in today's world?
Well, people talk about that. You know, you have to be a little sensitive about certain topics and maybe stay away from some topics. But I don't believe in staying away from topics. I think you could broach any kind of topic in stand-up as long as you approach it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going to talk about the Me Too movement, you have to have a certain approach to it, or whether it's religion or drugs or anything. You know, like if you're talking about the Me Too movement, maybe, you know, you talk about how men are idiots.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, let's give it a new spin there.
Yeah, yeah.
So how long did it take you to write your new set?
Well, I'm still writing it. It's always, you know, writing, stand-up is always an evolution for a lot of comics for their material. You go out on the road and you keep working on stuff, and I've done 2 specials, you know, since in my career. And I'm at that point now where I'm thinking, when did I do my last special? Is it time for a new special?
How long ago was it?
I looked, it was I think about 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, something like that. And so I rewatched it painfully. I hate watching myself. I rewatched the last 2 specials I did to see if I was doing any of that material still.
Yeah.
And thankfully, no, I wasn't. So I'm ready to do a new special.
Yeah, well, it's interesting now because 6 years ago was before the whole boom of comedy specials. And I'm sure you're seeing fellow comics and Netflix and Comedy Central.
Oh, yeah, dude,
and now's the time to jump in, Kevin. Come on.
I see people doing specials every year.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how could you come up with that much material, good material
Yeah.
in 1 year? A lot of times you can't. And they're not even really specials anymore. I think they should get rid of the word special.
What do you think they should call them?
Because they're not special. They're just so commonplace. Just maybe, you know, hours. Somebody's, you know,
Yeah, it's basically what it
so-and-so's
is.
hour.
Right.
You know, next hour.
Yeah.
But, you know, Dana Carvey had a great idea. When he did his special, or one of his specials, he called it Critics' Choice. So no matter how bad it was, it still said Critics' Choice. So I'm thinking maybe my special would be called 5 stars.
There you go. Nobody can dispute that right there.
And then show the stars.
So when, you know, we have comics come in here, I love to unpack who their inspirations were growing up. So when you think about people that you look to growing up, who were comedians that you were drawn to?
Oh man, there were so many, depending on what age I was. But when I was younger, I used to watch the Jerry Lewis movies. And then I started, you know, discovering all these comics like Stanley Myron Handelman and, you know, Bob Hope, all those, you know, from back then. But then as in my 20s, late teens, early 20s, I started discovering people like Andy Kaufman and Albert Brooks and Steve Martin. I thought these guys are so unique. So they're so different and original than comics that just tell jokes, you know. They're really breaking some boundaries there. And then over the years I got to become friends with
Steve
all
Martin?
3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with Steve, we're friends, we sit and have coffee and lunch and we talk, we write, we play the banjos together.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and that's fun. And then Albert Brooks I became friends with. I can't believe it, you know, I'm doing like, Bob Einstein was a good friend of mine, and that was Albert Brooks' brother, and he recently passed away. And I went to the mitzvah at their house, and I'm talking about Bob in the living room. You know, everybody got up and spoke, and Albert Brooks sitting right there, in front of me. And I think, geez, Albert Brooks, right there.
You got to pinch yourself in moments like that.
Yeah, and then Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, tell me about that relationship.
Well, I used to, I started at the Improv in Hollywood,
right?
Doing stand-up. I used to also bartend there for a couple of years. And so I was always there. I lived there practically. And I would see everybody come in there, all kinds of comics and movie stars. And Andy Kaufman would come there and perform. And I'd watch them, ad nauseum. I'd see him always on stage doing all of his, like, classical stuff, his classic bits. And I remember I came out to him on the sidewalk one time and I said, and I knew he was into meditation, TM. So I asked him about that. I said, Andy, tell me about TM. I was interested in it. And he talked for about a half hour.
Wow.
Watching the traffic go by. I was standing watching him, and I don't think I really listened to anything he was saying. It was kind of in the background.
Yeah.
I was just studying his face and the molds on his face and stuff. I'm thinking to myself, that's Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
There's Andy Kaufman right there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, man. I have so many great memories of comics and experiences, and like doing the Tonight Show for the first time with Johnny Carson. It's like the highlight of my career to this day, even more so than SNL or.
Well, that was just so significant at that time, and it was funny. Before you came in this morning, I pull up the clip, and it's amazing. Here in 2019, I can pull up that clip and see you on Carson for the first time.
I know.
I mean, and that just had such a huge place in society. So when you think about that, young dude, skinny tie, you get out there, you're ripping your jokes. I mean, what do you remember still about that night?
Oh, man, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was such a monumental time for me because I had been doing stand-up probably for about 6 years, and I had always auditioned for that show. I not always, but a couple of times I auditioned for it. I'd never been so nervous. The talent coordinator would come and see you, and eventually I got on, and I used to see the Tonight Show a lot. I would go there because they gave out tickets.
Right.
You could go see it for free.
Yeah.
It was like a Vegas show. I would see everybody on there, Paul McCartney, comics.
Oh my gosh.
So I knew the exact routine of that show.
Right.
I knew when they opened the curtains. I knew the band. I knew each guy, what they looked like in the band. And
You had all the knowledge you needed.
I knew it all. And next thing I know, they say you've been approved. You're going to go on the show on Monday, and this other night on a Friday, and in those 3 days, all I did was go over my 5 minutes in my head. That's all I could think about. I could be talking to you now and nodding. You think I was listening to you, but I'm really going over my act in my head.
Nothing else mattered at that point.
Nothing else, man. I was so zeroed in on it and focused. And so now cut to Johnny Carson introducing me. I'm behind the curtains. The band stops playing. He introduced me. The curtains open. The audience is applauding. I'm walking out to my spot on that shiny black floor. I'm on the Tonight Show. And I forgot my act. I couldn't remember how it started. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because I know Johnny's there and Doc Severinsen's there, and I get to my spot, and the audience, the last clap dies down, and I remembered it, and I started doing my act, and they started laughing, and then there was applause breaks, and Johnny, I could hear him laughing, and Ed McMahon, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm on the Tonight Show, and I'm killing it. What can be better than this? And then I finish. I go back to the curtain. Johnny gives me one of these, and then the talent coordinator, who I, sweated for so many times, big smile on his face. He goes, "You did great. Stay here. I think Johnny wants to talk to you. Come out and do panel." What?
Well, that was what I was going to say. Did you get invited to the couch?
So I go to the couch. I had more killer jokes that I had in my pocket, and and I'm telling him the jokes, and he's throwing his head back, laughing, and still a little cigarette smoke's coming out from the break when he had a cigarette, and I've never had more of a natural high than that between after I taped it and before it aired that night. I was praying for no natural disasters where it would be preempted,
Right.
And I was just floating, and nothing has ever come close to that.
No, I mean, even SNL, and that is really saying something. But that was the type of thing that one night can change the whole course of your career. That's how important it was back then.
Yeah. At least for me, if it did nothing else for anybody else, for me, it cemented it for me. It was like passing your bar exam as a lawyer.
Yeah, and you had been grinding for 6 years.
Yeah, which isn't a long time, really, for stand-up. I mean, some people go a long time before they get anything. So I felt, really lucky. And I still have my answering machine message tape from people calling and congratulating me afterwards. Yeah, all kinds of different,
So who'd you hear from?
Paul Reiser, Brad Garrett, Gary Shandling, Bob Saget, all the comics that were, around back then.
Because they understand it.
Yeah.
And the comics that got to do it also, they realized that natural high too.
Old friends, girls that I liked in high school.
People just coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Your Connecticut friends, all of a sudden, it's like, hey, there's Kevin. Haven't heard from you in years.
Yeah, and I just sit back and I'm like, on my bed, I'm just listening to him like, that's right. That's right.
Let me soak this in. Yeah. So how do you go from that point when you're at the highest of highs and then back into reality? What comes next for you to say, okay, I've done this, but what else do I want to do?
At that time, unlike today, The Tonight Show was really the only game in town,
right.
with Johnny Carson. So immediately, as soon as you're finished thinking, okay, what's my next 5 minutes? When can I get back on the show again? And just keep chipping away,
right.
chipping away. And that's what comics did back then. Now it's kind of like, okay, I did that special for Netflix. What's my next Netflix special going to be? You know?
It's just a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you're always like putting like carrots out there for yourself,
right.
and thinking, what is your next goal? But you really have to enjoy what you've accomplished. I tell a lot of people that now that are starting out, that are frustrated, and I say, look what you've done. You know, appreciate that and enjoy that moment. Live in it, live in the present moment and enjoy it. And the other stuff will come later, you know?
Yeah, and people today who are starting out can have that connectivity with people immediately through Twitter, through Instagram, whereas for you, it's just a TV show at that point. It's
yeah,
a totally
man.
different thing.
It's like I wrote a book.
Mm-hmm.
I had a book deal 12 years ago, 13 years ago. This is before social media.
Right.
So the book came out, it did okay, but it wasn't on the New York Times bestseller list because there was no social media to get out beforehand like they do now.
Right, it would just be word of mouth at that point, or read in the paper.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So things are definitely different now.
Definitely.
It's like this is like the carpool lane on the freeway now, you know.
Everybody just wants to get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing the whole stand-up thing, and when do you start to realize that you want to do more, whether it's SNL or movies or TV shows? When do you kind of broaden your scope there?
Well, my sole, you know, focus was to be a stand-up. That's all I wanted to be,
right.
a stand-up. In hindsight, I wish I had, you know, thought about learning how to write, get on a, you know, a writing, you know, a sitcom writing staff, learn how to do that so I could create my own show one day. Or even like get involved with a improv group like the Groundlings or Second City.
Yeah.
That would have been beneficial to me. But all I wanted to do was stand up. So that's kind of what I did. And then also acting, I was kind of embarrassed to tell somebody I wanted to be an actor.
Why?
I don't know, because in high school, you know, it was all the acting nerds that did it, you know, the theater nerds
right.
in college, you know. And stand-up but that's all I wanted to do, stand-up. And then Mark Lanau, who was one of the co-owners of the Improv and an actor himself, asked me if I thought about acting. And I said, no, I haven't really. He goes, well, you should think about it, because sometime, you know, a casting agent will come into the showroom and see your act and want you to come in and do a cold reading for a sitcom. So you should have some kind of knowledge. So I thought that makes sense. I didn't know that he had an acting class, and he was trying to get me as a
right.
student. But anyway, I did take some acting workshops around town, and that was a great thing for me because it helped me a lot.
Yeah, it obviously benefited you for years to come at that point.
Yeah.
So let's go late 80s now. Take me back to that SNL audition. What do you remember from that?
Well, I do remember that I'm very grateful to Dana Carvey. He was a friend of mine.
That's your guy, yeah.
Still is, yeah. And he got selected to be on the show for that coming fall. In that summer, this back in the 1900s. And I was so excited for him, and I was dating Jan Hooks at the time. We were also good friends for a long time, and we started dating, and she was up for the show. So I was excited for these guys, you know. They would move to New York and get on SNL, and how great is that? And then I get a call out of the blue from Dana Carvey. I'm in Los Angeles. He goes, Kev, I'm out at Lorne Michaels' house in Long Island. I'm in the back bedroom. Guess who's in the kitchen? Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. I said, you're kidding me. Oh, my God. He goes, anyway, Lorne's looking for one more cast member. And I told him about you, and I think he's going to see your tapes. I said, Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd are in the kitchen?
Wow. You couldn't even get past that.
I wasn't hearing the other stuff.
You didn't even care about
didn't
that.
Care. I know,
yeah.
I would never get on that show, you know. That was a pipe dream. So I sent my tapes in, not thinking anything would come of it. I forgot about it. 2 weeks later, another call from Dana. Kev, I'm back at Lorne Michaels' house. Guess who's in the kitchen? Steve Martin. I said, you're kidding me. Anyway, no, Lorne likes your tapes. I think they're going to fly you in for an audition.
Wow.
I said, Steve Martin's in the kitchen? Because I didn't do accents.
Still wasn't resonating.
I didn't do characters. I didn't do sketch work like that. I was just a stand-up, a really, really good stand-up.
No, you are, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why you're still doing it after all these years.
That's right.
No, come on, give yourself some
So
credit.
the next thing I know, I'm flying into New York for this role. And there's about 100 other people on the plane flying in for the same role. for me, it's just a free trip to New York.
Right.
You know,
did you know what you were going to do in your audition? Because you don't do voices
I think
and
so.
stuff.
I did some stand-up, and also Dana and I used to kind of jam in our driveway. We shared a house in the Hollywood Hills with a couple other comics. He was in the garage, in the studio apartment when he was in town. And so we had like 2 or 3 characters that we were kind of always kind of laughed about. We did. So I did those and some stand-up. And then I flew back to LA, and 2 weeks later I'm sitting in front of Lorne Michaels in a high-rise in Beverly Hills. He's offering me a job on Saturday Night Live. And I said, well, thank you. Let me think about it over the weekend. Yeah, that's the way I roll. You know, that's the way I play.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to show
How do you
your
think
hand.
I got on your show?
Yeah, exactly. You didn't want to show your hand too early.
So he goes, well, you think about it over the weekend. We'll see you in New York on Monday. The next thing I know, I'm at Lorne Michaels' house. And I got a call from Dana Carvey. Kevin, I'm back at Lorne Michaels' house in the back bedroom. Guess who's in the kitchen? I said, I'm in the kitchen now. I'm in the kitchen.
Wow. No, that's
Because
quite a
I showed
journey.
up, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought I'd get it, but I showed up. So what's it going to hurt, you know?
So you said it before, the Carson high was different from the SNL high. And on SNL, you're doing Weekend Update where you're playing yourself, and you're also playing characters.
Yeah.
So how do you compare those 2 experiences, and what do you remember most fondly about the SNL experience to
Well,
this
the
day?
thing about The Tonight Show is I was so new to the business, and that was such, you know, a feather in my cap to do that. So that was exciting. By the time SNL came around, this was 2 years later, I was, you know, a little more, not jaded, but I was a little more comfortable in my skin. And the SNL thing happened so quickly, too. I didn't even have time to tell people that I was moving to New York to be on SNL. And I was not, like I said, I was not a sketch player, so I had to learn all that stuff. I had to learn how to maybe do impressions of people and characters and catchphrases, you know, and it was exciting, too. I remember, because here I am with Jan Hooks, my girlfriend, my good friend Dana Carvey. It's just, what could be better in New York?
And a great time at SNL, too, at that point, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, no, well, actually, you know, the year before we came on, the show was almost canceled.
Yeah, that's right.
It was at the nadir of its existence. So we were living out of our suitcase every week. We're not sure if the show's going to be canceled or not, but it was exciting. And yeah, so we went on tour the first break after the first year. Me, Dana Carvey, and Dennis Miller. We did a stand-up tour that Swatch sponsored, and it was great. You know, we showed clips of SNL, and I was at a Red Lion Hotel in Des Moines, and I called Dana because Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing a Showtime up close and personal interview. I said, Dana, you got to watch Arnold, you know, because there's accent and stuff. Yeah, you know, they asked him, what do you do when you come into town? He goes, well, you know, I like to slip when I'm traveling. You know, I like to slip into a nice light collared shirt. I go into town, you know, I do my things, and then I come back to the hotel. I slip into the nice light collared sheets. You know, I like the feel of it all and things like that. And so Dana and I were doing impressions of him for the rest of the tour. You know, in the limo and where we're driving to.
That's
and
amazing.
we thought we got to come up with characters like next season for that voice. So we came up with Hans and Franz.
Off of Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I started to learn how to do characters and impressions.
Yeah, and you're learning it on the fly, too, which is really impressive. Because now you think about the cast of SNL today and how much background some of these people have in sketch and improv, and it was totally different for you at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really was. It was exciting, and I've never a boring moment. You know, that's why I really enjoy what I do. I'm not just doing stand-up. I'm writing. I'm acting. I'm doing some directing now. I do a little hiking show, you know.
I love the hiking show. We'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing about SNL is that you learned all those different skills there, and you got to do it over a long time. It's not just a 2 or 3 year period. I mean, you're there for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do stay for that long time because you kind of need to work through all the different things.
Yeah, yeah, you really do. You really do. I did learn a lot from that. I mean, I remember right before I went on the first sketch, it was even though it came so quickly, I didn't have time to get really that nervous. I knew that this stage had so much history to it. You know, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Steve Martin, Andy Kaufman, all these people that I admired so much and respected. And here I am on that stage, and I've got to be one of the people that continues with this, legacy. And I'm about to go on my first sketch, Mr. Subliminal, where it's a kind of a complicated character. You're doing 2 conversations at once. You know, you're slipping in words, and as we're coming back from the commercial, we're maybe 10 seconds away from being live on SNL, my first sketch. Lauren comes up to me, puts his hands on my shoulder, and he says to me, "Are you sure this is what you want?"
Oh, come on!
No, kiddingly, he said that.
Man. I mean, that's the only guy that could pull out that move 10 seconds before, right?
That was his sense of humor.
Definitely. And I'm sure it loosened you up a little bit, too, once you got out there.
You know, it was that kind of thing where you see in the hall, you know, and he say, "Are you still with the show?"
So we're back here in New York. I mean, I'm sure you must have some memories of, you know, running around the city at that point. Where are a couple spots that you guys would check out post-show or during the week at that point?
Well, you know, they had the after parties on SNL, and I never thought of them as parties, really. They were more like, everybody has their own limo, and you bring your friends to this one restaurant. It's a different restaurant each week. And you go in there, and you sit at the table with your friends, and then they gawk at all the celebrities, and you sit there, and you're tired, and then you pay your own bill.
Oh, you pay your own bill?
Friends. Yeah.
That's nice.
So it wasn't really like the original parties where they go down to the blues club.
Right,
you know?
that you read about, and you're like, those are kind of the parties that I wish I was part of. Yeah, I gotcha.
So I would never really want to go to those after parties. I would rather go home and go to bed, so I have Sunday and be able to get up at a sensible hour.
And just be functional at that point.
Yeah, and just rest. But if my friends or whomever were there, they wanted to go and see it, so you know, I'd go because I'm a people pleaser.
No, I hear you. So we were talking before off camera about Gary Shandling, and you did the Larry Sanders Show for a couple of years, and you had
I did one episode, one or two episodes on there,
that's right. So when you think about your relationship with Gary, just the type of writer that he was, the type of performer, what made him such a special guy?
Well, you know, I was talking before about Andy Kaufman and Steve Martin and Albert Brooks, but Gary was right in with that group. He was such a mentor to me. I mean, just a personal mentor. We became friends, and I studied him so much when he did his Tonight Show appearances or any stand-up anywhere. And I watched everything about him, and he was so forthcoming with information and his experience that he shared with people, and such a good writer. And over the years, we became really good buddies, and we would even perform together on stage. You know, I'd come out and we'd do things together, and
playing with somebody like that, I mean, that's just a special thing.
So much fun. Yeah, so much fun, and just all the long conversations we had on the phone when I was out of town. You know, if I had a corporate gig or something, I'd call him to help me write some material about maybe the CEO of the company, and you know, be on the phone for hours until like 1 or 2 in the morning, just talking about material and writing. So yeah, so many great memories with him, and then he passed away a couple of years ago, and people are still, you know, I think about him every day, and people talk about him, and
I bet.
He really made an impression, and such a trailblazer for the industry too, with shows like, you know, the Gary Shandling Show and Larry Sanders.
And just challenging himself to do different things.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, me and my buddies that were friends with him, when we do stand-up, we always say, you know, we can do his kind of mantra, like stay open, be present, you know.
Definitely. And I think it's cool for you now because you're kind of doing a little bit of everything. So you got your Man with the Plan, you're doing some directing, producing, got your hiking show. I mean, it must be an exciting time for you to kind of dip your toe in a little bit of everything now.
It's so exciting, and I'm so grateful for everything that I have, that the way it worked out this way. And I think it's important to have a balance too. You know, I have family, and I have hobbies, and it's not just all the business. But I'm so spread out, I'm never bored.
Right, and you don't have to do the stand-up thing where you're just traveling around nonstop anymore. You can kind of pick and choose your spots now, which is cool.
Yeah, I love it. And I love getting to this point in my stand-up where I'm trying to get to that next level, where I'm just
What is that next level?
It's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit for me.
Okay.
Like I said, I've always kind of didn't really want to make waves and be controversial.
Sure.
Not that I want to, you know, upset people, but I want to try to find that new avenue that like people like Andy Kaufman found, you know, or Steve Martin, and break out from that mold of everybody else. And you know, you could also be a good stand-up and not, you know, break out of the mold.
Right,
you could just have
your
great
own
material and be who you are. But I'm kind of ready to just find something else in that arena.
I gotcha. So let's talk Man with a Plan. I mean, that's definitely been a nice show for CBS. So what's been the coolest part of that experience for you?
I mean, talk about doing a lot of things. I mean, a traditional sitcom, I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've done a few of them, but they didn't last that long. But this one has been a great experience. The schedule is great if you have a family, so I love that. It keeps me in town. And, and the writers are great. The show is really funny, and Matt LeBlanc is great.
Good guy to work with.
Yeah, Liza Snyder, Matt Cook, and all these, Kelly Roach, Stacy Keach. I mean, look at this guy, man. He is so good. Everybody's so great on the show. And Matt is such, you know, Joey from Friends.
Yeah.
How you doing? So intuitive and insightful and smart when it comes to sitcoms. He knows structure, he knows characters, he knows when a scene is not working. He watches out for everybody. He knows everybody's lines. I mean, you would think this is all the guy does.
Right, it's like the quarterback who knows all the different offensive schemes there.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll be doing my lines, and just a little bit I'll be seeing him mouthing my words.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks for keeping me.
But it doesn't really happen that often. But he is really. It's almost like you really want to please him. You know, he's kind of become my Lorne Michaels. You know,
that's interesting.
Man with a plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt has been on Hiking with Kevin, so we got to talk about that because it's my favorite internet phenomenon these
days.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you.
How did it all start up, and what's it been like seeing it kind of blow up the last couple of years?
It's been really exciting to watch it. People, find it and discover it and enjoy it. It came about because I live in Los Angeles, and there's canyons, a lot of canyons in the Hollywood Hills.
Great places to hike.
Yeah, great place. And it's not that I'm a big hiker or anything. It's not. I don't have any magazines at home like on hiking or camping and stuff.
It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I like to get out and exercise. I used to go to the gym a lot and spend all my time inside working out. But if you could get exercise outside, and it's not just exercise, it's also mental relaxation because you're thinking and you're meditating, and I'm so creative when I'm hiking. I mean, I write a lot in my head, and I think of a lot of things.
Well, you can just escape and just focus in on your thoughts.
Yeah. And so I called Matthew Modine, who I knew. He used to host us. He hosted SNL once when I was on, and he was on Weeds for a recurring character. And so I said, Matt, you want to go for a hike up in the canyon? Because I knew he liked hiking. He goes, sure. So we're hiking up in the canyon, and we're about 2 hours. We're really hiking. It's a high timer. We're talking to each other, and we're out of breath. And I was thinking, this would be funny if I videotape this, as a funny clip, And so I'm holding the camera, and I'm asking questions, and I'm out of breath. You can't understand what I'm saying. I can't understand what he's answering. So it's funny. And then on the way down the backside of the mountain, I took out my camera again. I interviewed him again. I said, hey, Matt, you ever turned down anything that you regretted, career-wise, movies? He goes, oh, man, after Full Metal Jacket, it was such a big hit. I was a little picky after that. He goes, I turned down so many roles. I turned down the Michael J. Fox role in Back to the Future, the Tom Cruise role in Top Gun, the Charlie Sheen role in Wall Street, and there was Tom Hanks role in Big.
Oh, man.
And I said, you idiot. And we both laughed. It was fun. And then I posted it on Instagram and Twitter.
Perfect.
And people loved it. Yeah. And I thought I should do one of these hikes every week and get a selfie stick and with different friends. And that's what I did. So I've done almost 50 hikes now since then. And the equipment's gotten better, so it's not shaky and stuff. And
I just love how authentic it is, even though you've improved the equipment. It's just the two of you people just walking.
It's so raw.
And you get to ask whatever you want to ask. The raw part is the best part of it.
It's almost like you doing it yourself.
Right.
It's not like a real high-tech stuff where there's like a crew.
Right, exactly.
A lot of times people come to the meeting place, the trail, wherever we're hiking, and they'll go, where's the crew? I said, no, it's just me. And then I got a drone.
You got a drone?
Yeah, that I'll fly there beforehand, get some like B-roll, or I'll hike with them and I'll have the controls on my side.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
With a drone flying and following us.
That's awesome. Yeah. Look at you, the production value is
the whole
going
thing,
up there. You're the whole crew. You don't even need a crew.
I even valet their car for them.
So what have been a couple of your favorite hikes or favorite people you've had?
They've all been my favorite. Everyone has been so different. It's like songs. If you ask me what my favorite song is, it depends on the mood.
Depends on the mood, yeah.
But Owen Wilson was a fun hike because I didn't know him that well.
And who did you know the least that you brought out there?
The least?
Yeah.
I just hiked with Michael Stevens, who is a YouTube sensation. He has a show called Vsauce, and he's very educational. He'll take he has a great entertaining approach to explaining everyday phenomena, like why the sky is blue or whatever, So I hiked with him. I didn't know him very well at all. I didn't know him at all. I just met him at the trail. There's more hikes coming up that I don't know the people that well.
I think that makes it interesting then.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And then some people I know really well, like I hiked with Hilary Swank the other day, and I'm good friends with her, so that was very kind of an easy, kind of casual hike, But they've all been, so Conan O'Brien was fun.
That was a good one.
He's very forthcoming, talking about anxiety in his family. Sandler was good. I mean, they're all good. I mean, I can't pick one and say this was my favorite. It's not like I hiked with Obama or Oprah. And even if I did, a hike with Sarah Silverman or whomever would have been just as fun. I even hiked with my wife, in the Smoky Mountains. She's an actress.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the earlier hikes, if you look at the earlier ones, it's really interesting to see how it's evolved.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
especially the trails I used to go on were really narrow, so I couldn't get a lot of shots of them. You know, it was
Yeah,
over my head
you're kind
and
of bumping into people as you go along.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because, you know, you think about you and Sandler, you're doing movies, you're doing all this stuff together, and here you are hiking in 2019 and still creating great stuff together. So, I mean, it must be funny for you guys to think, like, where our relationship started and where we're at right now doing this stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, it's really, it's fun to do.
Definitely.
Yeah,
so,
and then also you don't know what you're going to come across on the trail in the summer in California. You know, there's rattlesnakes.
True.
There are many rattlesnakes we come across. I hiked once where I heard a very deep growl just off the trail in the bushes, like 20 yards down. Early in the morning, I was hiking with my script. I was learning my lines for weeds, and I was the first one on the trail, and I didn't like that growling sound. So I picked up the speed. I went up higher. I came down about an hour later. There's more people on the trail. I went home. The next day, they caught a 200-pound mountain lion
oh my gosh.
at the beginning of the trailhead there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of exciting in many ways.
Yeah, well, timing is everything in this life, right?
Yeah.
So you've asked it on your show. I got to ask you, what are the parts that you have passed on, or one part that you regret that you didn't get along the way?
I never pass on anything.
You've always said yes?
Yeah. No, I almost passed on a movie that Sandler brought me.
Which one was that?
I read it, and I thought, you know, I like doing the Sandler movies, but this one is just a little too juvenile for me and sophomoric. It's kind of, you know, almost embarrassing for me to be, you know, and so Sandler calls me, he goes, Nealon, I really hope you do this. He wasn't in it, he was just producing it. Because if you don't do it and it's a big hit, I'll feel bad you're not in it. But if it's not a big hit, no one will see it anyway, so what's the difference? I said, yeah, I guess you're right. And that was Grandma's Boy. And that wasn't a hit.
No, but it's kind of a cult hit at this point. Yeah,
cult
absolutely.
classic,
And it's funny how movies have that second bounce. It's something that doesn't do well at first, but now it's like people will check it out, and it's like, oh, all these different people are, this is great. You know? I
think another movie that I was in that I think was not a big hit, and it had a Harvey Keitel in it, Rodney Dangerfield, and Sandler, and so many great, Patricia Arquette, was Little Nicky.
Yeah.
And I think one day that will be, you know, a big kind of a cult.
Absolutely, because that was in that stretch with all those Sandler movies, and that one kind of got lost in the fold there. But yeah, that's a very funny movie.
Oh,
I think once people start to find it too, they'll appreciate it. But yeah, it's just interesting when audiences do find movies. You know, it really can take 5, 10, even 15 years sometimes.
I've told people about like a movie that I love. One of my favorite movies of all time, comedies, was The Heartbreak Kid with Charles Grodin.
Yeah.
And some people never heard of it. I thought, how could you not hear of this movie? So they go watch it and they go, oh my God, you're right. It's so good. It's so funny.
Well, it's crazy now because you're trying to keep up with the new stuff, but then there's all this stuff that you missed. Like for me, it's like I'm 25 and it's like I want to go back and watch the old stuff I never watched, but I also want to watch the new stuff too. So it's like this weird balancing act I'm trying to hit up.
It's so hard to watch everything.
There's so much
and
out there.
anytime somebody tells me you got to watch something so good, it kills me because I know I probably won't get to it for a long time. I haven't seen West Wing yet.
And that one.
I haven't even seen all The Sopranos or Breaking Bad yet.
You got to catch up. I mean, I remember reading an interview with you a couple years ago, and you were saying you hadn't seen these things.
I'll probably never see them.
Probably. At least you've started Breaking Bad. At least we're at that point.
Yeah, yeah. My problem is I just get too interested in doing my own stuff, you know, creating content.
Yeah.
And if I'm not creating content, then I'm sketching. I like to draw, you know. And it's, I really have to force myself to sit down and watch. Sadly.
No, it takes effort. You got family, you got friends, you got work.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh yeah, there's
like
all this
Narcos
other stuff.
now. I'm watching Narcos when I can. I'm in the current season at least, which was filmed last year. And I was hiking with Gabriel Iglesias the other day, and I was watching Narcos, and a gang came in, and he was one of the gang members.
Good time.
I said, dude, I saw you on Narcos. Took me out of reality.
Good time.
Or it put me back into reality. So yeah, that's my goal, is to try to relax more and you know, watch some shows.
I got you. Well, maybe you can do that after your weekend performances at Caroline's.
That's right, maybe.
Well, Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Why don't you tell everybody where they can catch you this weekend?
You catch me at Caroline's on Broadway Comedy Club. It's a great club. I'll be there tonight and Saturday, 2 shows.
All right.
Yeah, and then you can check out my website, kevinnealon.com, for my tour dates, and also my hiking show, Hiking with Kevin.
Definitely do that.
Hashtag Hiking with Kevin, or youtube.com/Kevin Nealon Comedy.
There you have it. Kevin Nealon. We'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.